workers.
Mr. Peiris, in one of my earlier questions you said that 91% of the employers in Sri Lanka believe that the labor laws in the country should be restructured and should be enabled in a manner where employment generation happens in a very quick and an expedite manner. I want to know, Mr. Peiris, have you been able to have a chat with the laborers of this island about these laws that are in place currently in the island, about how it has to be restructured, it has to always be a tripartite approach? Have you been able to have a survey or do something for the laborers in respect of this and have a discussion with them in respect of this particular subject in question, employment generation in the island?
Well,
it's post-conflict era
yes,
now.
well, to respond to you, it's 91% not of all employers in Sri Lanka, 91% of those who responded to a survey. That is the statistic that I gave you. But in relation to the views of the workers, what we do is we always have, we have discussions with worker representatives, the trade unionists. And that is a group which have direct links with the workers. And we believe that they bring in the views of workers, but I must say that we haven't directly done a survey of the ordinary workers in this country, which I feel is also a good exercise to embark on. But I think even for the ordinary worker to have some idea of the labor legislation in Sri Lanka is quite an uphill task, because it's so complex. It's so complex and it needs simplicity. And that is the first thing, because we have so many pieces of legislation, some of which are totally outdated, the provisions. So these are things that we need to address.
According to a recent survey that you all did find out that 19% of the youth in the island are unemployed. What is the reason behind this? Is it the archaic laws that is in existence, Mr. Peiris?
Well, I would say when you compare the statistic with the statistic that I gave, in terms of the 19% is from the Department of Census and Statistics, that 19% of the youth population in Sri Lanka is unemployed. It's an alarming figure, 1/5 almost. Now if you compare this figure with the ideas or the views of employers, saying 91% of them saying that employment generation cannot be done because of archaic labor laws, what are you saying? You are giving a message to the youth in this country saying that, here are employers not willing to open up employment opportunities because of the labor laws. So I think it is time for the youth also to make representation, saying that here we are being stopped from getting into employment because obviously employers need some enabling legislation. So that is also a reason that should be taken into account. It sends a very, very strong message to the youth.
We're now going for another short commercial break. When we come back, we speak to Mr. Ravi Peiris, DG of the EFC, on the employer-employee relations and what must the Sri Lankan government do in order to change and make sure that an enabling environment is created to generate employment in Sri Lanka. All this and more after this short commercial. Well, welcome back to Biz First in Focus. Mr. Peiris, unfair labor practices. We just marked May Day. Unfair labor practices is one of the key concerns of the laborers in Sri Lanka. They say that some private sector institutions do not promote the establishment of trade unions. Tell me, EFC, how do you view this?
If any particular company comes and tells us that the majority of the workers wish to join a union, we would very openly tell them that they must recognize that union. That is the basis on which we have operated during the last 82 years. And if you ask any trade union, irrespective of political affiliations, I'm sure they will say that the EFC is one organization which has dealt with them without any political bias. And that is precisely why we have been able to keep up our credibility amongst unions. So we are fully for recognizing the right of the worker in choosing as to what he wants. Now there's a slight difference between the freedom of association being recognized, where the right of the worker is recognized to choose an organization of his choice, and any other organization thinking or assuming that it is that organization which the worker wants. Now there's a bit of a mix-up here sometimes, because a lot of accusations are made to employers saying that they are not promoting a trade union, when in fact the majority of the workers do not want it.
Let's direct our attention towards the free trade zone of the island.
Yes.
In respect of that, you know for a fact that outside organizations cannot really go to the FTZ and establish a trade union, and all the trade unions that are established has to be within the FTZ itself. Are you aware of that?
No, it is not right. The laws apply to all. There are FTZ zone companies which have trade unions in our membership, which have collective agreements. So that is not correct, right? There are companies within the FTZ having trade unions and having collective bargaining negotiations with us and having collective agreements. I would agree with you that the number of trade unions within the FTZ is not as much as outside. This is a matter that has been addressed by the government also, and it has been addressed by us as well, because we did some work with the US Department of Labor, through the ILO, with the government, in promoting awareness of worker rights, and also in promoting better industry relations, where we got involved directly in training supervisors as to how supervisors should react to employees and get them to work. So I think the most important point here to remember is that the most important man in this whole equation is the worker, not any other person, not the Ministry of Labor, not the EFC, or not any other trade union, or not even the ILO. We need to ensure that the worker's choice prevails.
Having said that, Mr. Peiris, are we complying with the standards that have been put forward, set out by the International Labour Organization?
I think we are one of the most compliant countries in South Asia. With a very, very high sense of responsibility, I am saying this. But at the same time, I must say that we have raised certain issues with the ILO, where certain interpretations have been given by the ILO in terms of the application of the standards in our country. Now what you need to remember here is another important matter, where the ILO is an international organization, part of the UN system, a unique organization which has tripartite membership. We have the workers, we have the employers, and we have the governments. 182 countries represent the ILO. And these countries are from different parts, and they have different capacities in terms of the economic capacity. But they conform, not that they conform, the principles, the standards by the ILO are the conventions and the recommendations, which some countries have ratified, and there are some countries which have not ratified. Now once you ratify these conventions, there is an obligation on the part of the country to bring in their legislation in terms of this convention. And I must say that all our labour standards that we have ratified, there is adequate legislation supporting it. But in order to really implement these legislation, the government has to take steps in order to ensure that the legislation is implemented. In doing so, there is interpretation of the legislation which is done by the judiciary. And judicial interpretation is also very, very important, because judicial interpretation would interpret in the context of the industrial relations situation of our country. So there had been a little bit of an issue where certain issues, I don't go into the details, were basically questioned with regard to strike action as to what a strike is, when in fact it was a go slow. The ILO had different views, and we did not agree, because our courts did not agree. Because I think it is important even for the ILO to realize that when they interpret standards, ILO standards, they must take into consideration the peculiar industry relation situation of that country and the economic capacity of that country, and give due recognition. You can't have a one-size-fits-all approach to all countries. This is very important.
Mr. Pillai, my final question to you. Sri Lanka is now moving towards development. Sri Lanka government wants to make the country the miracle of Asia by 2016. Employment generation is a key factor in order to move towards this goal. You've been attached to the EFC over the last 2 decades, as we did just speak about it a couple of minutes ago. Tell me, what is your recommendation to the Sri Lankan government in this crucial juncture?
I think the Sri Lankan government has done the correct thing in having recognized a very good labour policy. If you look at the government's labour policy, which is enshrined in the 10-year Horizon Development Framework, which was introduced in 2007, the labour policy has 4 policy directives, and we fully accept these 4 policy directives. What are the 4 policy directives? Strengthening employer-employee relations, enhancing productivity, enhancing skills, and creating an environment to generate employment. Absolutely spot on. What we need to do is to make these proposals, recommendations a reality in terms of changing the framework. That is exactly what is needed, and that is exactly what we have been telling. We are not asking for a hire and fire rule. We are not asking that, termination laws should be relaxed, I know, but there are more important things to be done to create an enabling environment for investors to come into this country. And as you correctly said, we have recorded a growth percentage of 8%, and probably it may be down to 7%, but if we are going to sustain this growth, there has to be investment brought in. And for investment to be brought in, we have to have investors who would like to come and invest. And they would certainly look at the labour relations framework, the employment relations framework, the labour laws, to check out whether this is a conducive environment to invest. So I think I'm hopeful at least now the government will translate these policies into action.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ravi, for joining us right here on this press conference.